Welcome back, everybody. And I'm sorry I don't have an intro video for you. I'm reworking our intro, so that's why I don't have one for you. Back with us is friend of the show since day one, man. I think actually you might have been one of the very first guests we had on back when we were doing Tradman. Trevor Alcorn from our favorite apostolate, Tridentine Brewing, is here, and so if Trevor's here, we're going to be chasing a cold one for sure at the end of a long, hard day. And we're going to talk about installation 3 of Mass of the Ages, which in my opinion is one of the, if not the most important Catholic media project, certainly of my lifetime. But before we get into it, let's say a quick prayer to the Holy Ghost for enlightenment, wisdom, and that we will be able to discern these important topics in a rightful and efficacious way. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Amen. Veni Sancti Spiritus, repte tuora corda fidelium, et tui amoris in e signi maciende. Imite Spiritum tuum et creabuntur, et renovabis faciam terre. Oremus. Deus qui corda fidelium Sancti Spiritus illustratione docuisti, da nobis iniorum Spiritu recta sapere, et eos semper consolatione gadere per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Trevor, you were actually at the premiere, were you not? Tell us about that. Was that cool?
It was an amazing experience, Mark, and it's actually our second premiere that we went to for Mass of the Ages.
Okay.
Back in 2022, they had a premiere for episode 2, and they invited us for that. And I will say that this premiere was even better than premiere for episode 2, and the theater is really phenomenal that they have it at. It's up near Chicago in the suburbs in Park Ridge.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it has to have a capacity of at least 500. I mean, the main theater is enormous, like beautiful Art Deco. And so really fitting setting, beautiful theater, and a great way to kick things off for part 3.
When Mass of the Ages episode 1 came out, I was so taken by it, and I was so captivated by it and fired up by it. I said, this is a film. Like, if I were a filmmaker, I would have loved to have made this movie. I don't know the first thing about filmmaking, but goodness gracious, the thing about the traditional Latin Mass is it is so visually and auditorially stunning. It deserves to be, memorialized with this important film. Episode 2 came out, and we were lucky enough to get Cameron O'Hearn on the show back when we were doing Tradman to talk about that with us. I wanted to have Trevor on to talk about episode 3 because I specifically didn't want somebody from Mass of the Ages, because I knew episode 3 would be hard to watch. Well, first of all, do you know what I'm talking about when I say it's hard to watch? Did you sense a little bit of that too?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes. Yeah.
I can't imagine. See, Traditionis Custodes, when that first came out, it was painful. I mean, that hurt me tremendously. And not because, look, our Latin Mass situation here in Houston is not changed at all. We have a fraternity parish here, we've been assured we're good to go. But it's not that. It's hard for me to watch sometimes the cruelty of our pastors and the way that they are towards us, and that men that we hold up as successors to the apostles, who will look right at the camera and lie and smile while they're doing it. And it just I wonder what it must have been like maybe for Jesus to hang around Judas Iscariot before the Last Supper. And every time Judas tried to be his buddy, was Jesus just like, okay, yeah, you know what I mean? I don't know. I wonder about that. I don't know. Episode 3 was difficult to watch on many, many levels. What was your takeaway from episode 3? What did you like about it? What are some things you didn't like about it?
Wow. So first of all, the cinematography is visually stunning. And by the way, I may say things. I'm guessing that anyone who's watching tonight will have seen the film. So go see the film. I may say some spoilers in here, so please go.
Spoilers abound. We're going to put a description. We'll put a link in the description if you haven't seen episode 3, so you can go watch it.
Yeah, no. certainly go and do that. The cinematography was amazing. I thought that the story was really captivating, and how they really had a focus as well on these French mothers of priests and
that broke me. I mean,
yeah.
that broke me. That one broke me. Yeah.
That was really and what was interesting is, and I read a review article from Father Dave Nix, who was there at the showing, and he really related a lot to his own mother in seeing that, and the love that his mother had for his priesthood and the church. And so I can only imagine, the great love that those mothers have for their sons. And obviously they showed that through months long pilgrimage on foot. And these women are, in their 70s. So it's not like that would have been an easy pilgrimage.
Sure.
Not all of them even made it, but that was really a phenomenal part of the film, just showing the really busting this myth that exists, that the traditional Latin Mass is this, Eurocentric American, white Anglo-Saxon thing, and it's like
it's a tool of white supremacy. Exactly. Oh no!
I think that they did a really good job of.
Who knew these 2,000-year-old Jews and their Messiah were actually neo-Nazis the whole time? They got us, Trevor.
That's right.
Been found out.
So they definitely put America Mag to shame, the Jesuits publication, in that. I also thought that it did a good job in the end of showing that we have to persevere through suffering. That I think you come into a film, and I think when people hear trilogy, they think Lord of the Rings. They're coming in for Return of the King. Here we go,
right?
And I think we all know that that's not quite where we're at yet. We're
this,
not.
This trilogy ends more like Empire Strikes Back and less like Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's so from that standpoint, it's a little bit anticlimactic because we're living it right now. We haven't reached the final destination. It's not like we're in the next papacy and things have been restored and this glorious restoration of the church. And so from that perspective, that's not what it's going to show. But I think that that's okay, because really the film really shows us that, and this is true of life, right? I mean, it's filled with suffering. And there was a really tremendous, I think it was a perfect clip at the end of the film with Archbishop Fulton Sheen. Saying that, Catholicism is founded in suffering and death. I mean, that's when it started, in catastrophe, right? And so that really resonated, because at the end, after seeing the French mothers, you'd be hoping for, okay, great, the Pope reads some letters, he comes through, he apologizes, he removes the restrictions,
or at least backs off a little,
backs off, and that doesn't happen, and it leaves you wondering, like, what's the purpose? But I think that helps to reinforce the point that at the end of the day, we're not going to get everything that we want in this life, and so it's to keep on persevering. And so that's a hard message to hear, no doubt, and I think that some people don't want to hear that. But
I gotta thank my good friend Angela Erickson, who because last night after I watched the show, I watched it kind of late. I didn't get in for the live viewing. Wife's already asleep, and I'm just enraged, right? So I need to text somebody, and I'm like, Ange, I think I've lost hope. Because I saw the film, and I'm not filled with the enduring hope in suffering. I'm filled with just anger and rage. And she was like, I think there's a lot. I mean, she in a very just sort of simple way, she just said, I think there's a lot more to be positive about than that. And it just sort of reminded me that to take a step back sometimes. I have this great Catholic priest to me. His name was Father Walter Shue. I don't know where he is or what he's doing nowadays. But I was complaining something about modernism this and modernism that, and Vatican II this and Vatican II that. And he said, Mark, we're the Catholic Church. We think in terms of centuries. And he's absolutely right. The people, if you think about Notre Dame Cathedral, the people who began digging the crypt of that church knew that if they were lucky and if they worked fast and hard enough, maybe their great grandchildren would get to hear the first mass said in this church. That's thinking in terms of centuries, right?
Yeah.
We're the Catholic Church. We're here for the long haul. We're not going anywhere. Men have said they were going to wipe us off the planet since 33 AD, and all those men are dead, and the Catholic Church just keeps on trucking. So, I think that's really the way we've got to approach this, and I think that was an important lesson of the film as well. I think they did a great job because it's not a happy story to tell. I've never seen cruelty like that in the middle of a pandemic when some people haven't been to mass, let's say in months, and they obey and they do as they're told. They complain about it. They don't have to like it, but hey, they obey. They do as they're told. Some people's houses were burned down in riots. Other people died of COVID. Some people lost their jobs. Some people lost everything. And that was the time when our pastors decided to take it away forever for no other reason other than you like it. They told us so in Traditionis Custodes. They told us the reason we're doing this is it's nothing wrong with the liturgy itself. It's you people. I don't like you people. I don't like your kind of people. Wow. Right. It's like I have this theory. Do you want to know why I think Summorum Pontificum came out when it came out?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think when the sex abuse scandal broke in the early 2000s, I think Benedict was like, we got to give these people something. We got to give them this one. They deserve it. I mean, we got to give them something. And this is not an unreasonable ask. Come on. And they couldn't, and Trevor, they couldn't even let us have that. In fact, they gave it to us just so we could fall in love with it so they could take it away. They did it to be hurtful. I still cannot wrap my head around cruelty like that. I mean, I understand sometimes telling your children, no, you can't have a chocolate bar. What I don't understand is telling them you're going to give them a chocolate bar, giving them the chocolate bar, waiting till they unwrap it, and then grabbing it and throwing it in the trash because you want to see them suffer. That doesn't make any sense to me. I've never heard of sociopathy quite that cruel in my life. Anyway, rant ending.
Yeah, I definitely hear you there, Mark. And it's quite ironic given how much the current Holy Father loves to talk about the marginalized, caring for people on the margins, et cetera, while all the while doing this, right? Welcoming anyone and everyone in except for those that love the tradition of the Roman Rite.
You stuffy, I don't like you. And I can't wait for this. They're going to, Trevor, their documents coming out. They're going to teach us about human dignity and compassion. This I can't wait for. Are we going to get tolerance lessons from David Duke next? What would anybody in the Vatican know about human decency? I mean, are you kidding me? Well,
it's
whatever.
Quite the document.
I could go on and on, but what I do want to say about the film itself is that they were able to tell this story with a lot more charity than I think I obviously would have been able to. I think they told look, my version of the story is very skewed. I'm Irish. I hyperbolize and I, stretch things out to infinity to make them ridiculous. You have to tell this story correctly. You have to tell it truthfully, and I think fairly, right? And speaking of fairness, the SSPX got an interesting treatment in this film. What was your take on the film's treatment of the SSPX? This is a little bit of a controversial take, so if you don't feel like weighing in, you don't have to. But
oh no, I'm fine. By the way, I know Mark goes to FSSP parish. I go to FSSP parish. I'll say that I don't have anything against the SSPX. I have family that go to the SSPX. So I'll just say that. So I think it would have been good if the SSPX was included more in the film, because I will say, in all fairness, it definitely had an Ecclesia Dei community slant to it. It was very much so a viewpoint of the FSSP or Institute Christ the King that came across in some of the narrative in the film. Now, at the end of the film, they made a disclaimer and said that they had interviewed the SSPX, but that the SSPX chose to pull their interviews prior to the film being published. So I don't know if that's because the SSPX didn't like how it was framed, or what happened with that.
Sure. And we could never know, probably.
Yeah. And we could never know. But I think that would have been a very positive thing if the other side of the coin was at least given a little bit more airtime, because definitely, Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre was kind of put a little bit in a negative light in the film, and that what he did was disobedience. But then, Ecclesia Dei communities came up, and certainly that is the viewpoint of those in the FSSP, and at least those in those particular fraternal communities, maybe not all the parishioners, but
sure.
I think that would have been better if that other side of the coin was shown a little bit more, the other perspective, because I can see how, if I was stridently pro SSPX, I went to an SSPX chapel, if I viewed the film, I'd have mixed feelings about it in the way that SSPX was portrayed, and a little bit the solution, right? Because the film at the end really puts out as, we're here for the long haul, we have to suffer. And I think that the SSPX position might be, why are we suffering? Let's just keep on expanding, right? We'll just put another chapel here, another chapel there. I'm not saying anything against that. I think that, and there was even an article I read, and I would encourage the readers to go read it. I think it was a fair treatment. It was from someone who goes to the SSPX, Murray Rundis, who was a child actor, and he writes for Catholic Family News. It's in Catholic Family News. I saw Murray there. He attended the premiere in Chicago and interviewed Cameron, the producer of the film, or director. And so I thought there's a lot of fair criticisms that are made, and that was one of the things that Murray brought up, was just the portrayal of the SSPX, and he goes the SSPX, so he wasn't as favorable to the film because of that.
I honestly think, like, when it comes to the SSPX, and I'm looking in the chat, and Daniel from Mass of the Ages is here. Daniel, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming. And they're talking a little bit about this, but I'm thinking and I don't know anything about filmmaking again, but I'm thinking from a narrative point of view, the SSPX is almost a story you could just do a whole film about, because the events leading up, Econ, Switzerland, was a watershed moment in this movement that we call the traditional Latin Mass restoration movement, whatever you want to call it. It was a watershed moment. It is the catalyst for sort of everything that will come after that. And it really kicks off the modern, I guess, liturgy wars, for lack of a better term. And I thought, how would you introduce that story without going off track? And I just thought, maybe that's why, again, a film is a piece of art, and you can always wonder why Rembrandt used this brush stroke instead of that one. But at the end of the day, that's what makes it a Rembrandt, right? So I'm not one to question the artistic, decisions of the filmmakers. I can see where that would be challenging. And also, you don't want the film to go off into a SSPX versus FSSP debate, which, you know what I'm saying? Because then you lose the plot a little bit. Sure. What I did love about the film is, like we talked about, the ending, the way they ended it with hope, and with, I think, a bigger understanding of what it is we're involved in. This is not really a liturgical war. This is a battle between good and evil that we're a part of, but we're not the whole thing. You know what I mean? And like that priest told me, we've got to think in terms of centuries. Because it's easy to think, well, the Catholic Church will live and die with me. And it's like, no, probably not. Okay. So if I don't fix it in my lifetime, the church will fail. Give me a break.
Yeah. And I think
I'm more along the lines of, like, fix yourself, and then you can worry about fixing the rest of the Catholic Church. So
that's right. I mean, because at the end of the day, our own world's going to end with us, right? When we die, we're going to be judged, and it's not going to be, well, what happened in the Catholic Church, and things that we can't fix. I mean, we can try, obviously, fix ourselves and locally do what we can.
Yeah.
And to your point, I think as well, Mark, the suffering aspect of it, when we think of in ages, like think how long it took even by the time that Protestantism broke out, and by the time we had Council of Trent and Counter-Reformation, decades,
yeah,
decades
60,
and decades,
60 years, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, of all this stuff going on before the church had a really serious response and punch back against this, or even sufferings. Let's just take Japan. All these Catholics there, they get catechized, kept the faith for hundreds of years, even though they were persecuted, had no priests for hundreds of years, and kept the faith. You can imagine them thinking, well, when's God going to come down and save us? We don't have the sacraments, we don't have a priest. And so we have to think about those things, that like maybe this is because this is what we need for ourselves and for our own salvation. And it's not about what God's going to give us. And it's not so, like, we like to think of it as like a movie, like, okay, we're going to snap our fingers in a couple of years, bam, it's all going to be fixed. And we're going to have that Return of the King type ending to all this, and everything's going to be great. And it's like, it may not happen in our lifetime, and it may even get worse in our lifetime. So it's just, it's something we have to come to terms with.
And like you said, when you brought up the Protestant Reformation, I mean, modernism is not the first heresy the church has had to fight. And I do believe that it will eventually win the war with modernism. In fact, I think if I take a step back from my emotional point of view, which is, like I said, Irish Catholic, so I'm just constantly enraged by everything. If I take that off for a moment, let's take a step back and look at the data, okay? Because the film spent some time on this. Traditionis Custodes, do you think that was a success for the Holy Father? Didn't look like it to me. I mean, the data doesn't show it. Now, it's easy to mythologize it in your head, like evil's always winning, good'll never win, and even when we win, we'll just quit in the middle, so we'll never win. I mean, it's easy to go there. But take a step back and look at what's actually happening. The Latin Mass, after Traditionis Custodes, grew. It got bigger. It got more popular. Francis made the classical error. He gave it legs like it's never had before. There were op-eds in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, BuzzFeed, Newsweek, CNN, MSNBC, and they all made Francis look like an ogre. It was a PR nightmare for him. And if you've noticed, he's backed off of it quite a bit. He had recently met with the SSPX just to tell them they're good. I mean, not the SSPX, the FSSP, just to let them know you're good. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought. No, but I mean, yeah, seriously. And then the part in the movie about Africa, I loved that scene. I think Africa might be the future of the Roman Church.
I think so. I agree with you, Mark, there. It's I love that scene as well. And it was really fascinating at the end of the film, and this wasn't shown on film, that there's a Q&A afterwards, and they had a priest up on stage who's been to Africa, and what he said was, if for every priest that we put in Africa, that generally yields 100 additional priests, meaning the number of vocations that come from just that priest and his service in Africa yields that many more vocations. So you can only imagine, like, the more that the church grows there, especially with, tradition, that's going to be an explosion. And so I agree, as we inevitably see the continued decline in the West, that, there's a lot of hope there in Africa. It's not this panacea. I know a lot of people will say, oh, they'll bring up Africa like it's a silver bullet, but there is a lot of truth there too. And you saw it in the film, how simple those people are. It's, they're not infected by this, rationalism and liberalism there. So, when they're taught the faith, they grasp onto it, they hold on to it in such a very beautiful way that I think that, I see it in my children, but it's such a beautiful thing to see that, even in adults.
Yeah, it is really moving to see it in children. You're right. I mean, that one little boy in Tanzania who, I mean, he's already, that's my vocation. I'm going to be a priest.
Yeah.
Say it with your chest, young man. I like it. I like it. Yeah. Episode 2, was a much more, man, that took some guts, because that's a complicated story to tell. And they really are, they're trying to tell all the backstory and everything. And I always wondered, I was like, how are they going to do episode 3? Because there's no, episode 3 is, how do you tell the story without talking about Traditionis Custodes? So I'm amazed that they did. And I think they did it in a way where Catholics who are not accustomed to all of this can pick it up quickly and just start, because there may be Catholics who are out there wondering what all the fuss is about. I'm sure, or non-Catholics, especially, who are wondering what all the fuss is about. And I think now you're not going to be able to pick up Mass of the Ages and you're going to be an expert in all this, but I think it covers some good ground for the uninitiated, which that's difficult to do.
Yeah,
I don't think they couldn't do it with Dune.
Well, I think you hit upon a really important note, and it's a note, Mark, that I see it over and over again, at least on social media, or with certain traditionalists, where they mistake the audience of the film. I mean, this happened when I saw reviews for the Cabrini film that came out too. It's like people forget who the audience is for these films, and in the case of Mass of the Ages, this is not for traditionalists exactly. This is to reach out to other Catholics who are maybe going to Novus Ordo, who are faithful, to show them the beauty of the Mass and to catch them up to speed, and to show them, the Latin Mass is not like with episode 2. It's not just the Novus Ordo said in Latin, like I think so many people seem to think. So the same is true of episode 3. Whereas I think, you could go down a whole rabbit hole of critiques or bringing out all these differences between these, different factions of traditionalists and SSPX, FSSP. And at the end of the day, I think someone who's just getting into tradition, into the traditional Latin Mass, you don't need to tell all that stuff. They'll pick it up along the way. You're trying to engage them and bring them into this, as opposed to settle the score and differences between these different, warring factions. Like no one needs to hear that.
Yeah, I think the thing about America is politics is the only sport we have left in America, and we're so into it that we think everything's political. So a lot like a lot of people who these I can't even say Catholics for choice is what they call themselves, I guess, or whatever. I think they come from this position of, well, I'm Catholic, I just hold a different political opinion than you do. Well, here's the thing. The Catholic Church actually doesn't have political opinions. The Catholic Church does not care if the Republicans or the Democrats win the House, Senate, White House. They don't care about the Supreme Court. The Catholic Church has theological and moral teachings. The Catholic Church is not against abortion because it wants Republicans to win the House. Like that's Americans thinking on very one-dimensional level that everything's about politics. No. This is about something deeper than that. It's intrinsic to the dignity of who you are. And if abortion is morally acceptable, then there isn't any good reason why all homicide isn't morally acceptable in any situation where one might find it convenient to do so. And if you can come to me with an argument that makes sense out of that, I certainly will listen to you. But so far, all I hear is, but the Senate, but the House. And it's like, so when it comes to the Latin Mass, I do think a lot of people think that this is a political issue. Everything's politics, right? But it's deeper than that,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I think too, like even, very simplistically, and I know it's false, but ascribing the even like motives for why it was restricted to Taylor Marshall did it, or someone else made the Holy Father bed. It's like, come on, guys. Like I know that everyone likes to live in a certain Twitter bubble or social media bubble, but this fight, like you were talking about before, Mark, is between good and evil. It's not about these little spats that you might see online or between different groups. There's a lot more fundamental reasons why it was restricted, and why, for example, the Holy Father is opposed to it. And it's not because of some little battle between a podcaster or a couple crabby trads somewhere in America. it's a lot deeper than that.
Speaking of, well, should I? Yeah, we're gonna go there. There was one issue I took with Mass of the Ages. Maybe I'm in the wrong here, but I feel like they made an overly they overly attempted to make apologia for the Holy Father and his actions. Well, maybe he didn't know what was in the document. Well, then why did he sign it? Who signs? I learned when I was like 6 or 7 years old, don't sign a document unless you know what it is you're signing. And especially don't do it if it's going to affect millions of people that you've never even, bother to know. Mm-hmm. My goodness, if someone came to me today and said, Mark, we're going to have to suspend the Byzantine Rite. Do I just go, yeah, type it up and I'll stamp it? What? Hang on. What are you talking about here? And then there's a report. Tell me about this report. How did you no, he doesn't ask any of these questions apparently.
Right.
And I'm sorry, but I don't know if that's better. I don't know if it's better that the Holy Father is an imbecile instead of evil. I don't, I don't know what to say about that, but I just think I'm over the Pope-splaining. I'm kind of over it. You know what I mean? And I get that maybe you have to do it, or maybe they really feel that way. Maybe they feel differently about it than I do. Maybe it's a more charitable way to look at it. I don't know, but
yeah. I mean, of course, I think the line ascribe to ignorance what you can rather than to malice. I mean, that's good up to a point, right? And I'm with you. I'm over the Pope-splaining. I think that ended in, like, for me, 2014 or 2015. My tolerance.
I hung in there way longer.
Yeah. So, but I think at the end of the day, to your point,
mm-hmm.
I agree. I think it's a very valid point. I think even into episode 2, I think that same apologia for Paul VI was there about, well, maybe Paul VI didn't really know what was going on with the Novus Ordo and what the concilium was doing, or the group, I should say, that was putting together the Novus Ordo. I think, though, that was probably also, when we go back to talking about the audience and who this is meant for, that was probably also strategic in the audience that this is for, right? Because, again, this isn't for traditionalists. This is for your normal Catholics who, if they're going to hear a bunch of, Pope bashing, that's going to turn them off. So if you put it in a light of,
and at the end of the day, they're probably right. They're probably right, and I'm probably not. Like I said, I get.
I'm right with you, though. I'm
fed up. Like,
yeah, I don't agree with that. That line of the line of thinking that, we didn't know. I think that's I get
that's
where
worse.
That comes from.
Yeah,
that is worse,
but it's worse when you think about it, because now that means that who's now I'm left to wonder who's really running the show. Now we have a Joe Biden type situation.
Yeah.
Because it's no joke. It's no joke, folks.
I agree. Well, and when I hear that type of discourse, especially on social media, from people who are Pope-splainers and who will back on 100% any decision that comes out, never criticize anything, and that's the answer that you get as well. He just didn't know. It's like, that sounds worse, actually, because I'd like to say that he's smart, he's capable, he knows what he wants. He's getting what he wants. And all I can say is that obviously he has maybe motives that aren't so good. And
I think
that's all I can ascribe it to. So yeah, at this point, we've seen, 11 years of the pontificate. I think we know the direction. This isn't 2014. It's not like, well, we don't know exactly. We know. But from the film's perspective, I get why they went the route that they did. If the motive is, we don't want to come across as Pope bashing. We just want to get across the message that we really need to get this reversed. And, let's pray for the Holy Father. Let's continue to petition him that he reverses course. And, it's a good strategy to get people on board who might have this, still very lingering feeling in the church of, whatever the Pope says is basically infallible. I mean, I think it's very wrong idea of the Pope, but there's a lot of people that still think that way. So, I get it editorially why that it's like that in both films, episode 2 for Paul VI and episode 3 for Pope Francis.
And like I said, at the end of the day, they might even be right. It might, because I mean, there is a certain amount of, when it comes to our religious superiors, until we know that, maybe we give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that is the better way to do it. I mean, right? I once had, I think that same priest, Father Walter Shue, said, always err on the side of charity. Just err on the side of charity. If you don't know, err on the side of charity. And so, that's fair. That's fair. Well, we're 35 minutes into it. I'm sure Avoiding Babylon is on. I thought I'd have more to talk about, but I don't know. I think I'm done. I don't have much else to say, man. Like I said, it was a great film. And for those of you who haven't seen Mass of the Ages, episode 1, 2, or 3, I highly, highly, highly recommend you see this film. It is, like I said, in my opinion, the most important Catholic media project of my lifetime for sure. But I think probably since the Passion of the Christ. I mean, and that's different. That's a telling of the story of our Lord. This is a telling of a story about a current issue. So it's like a kind of a different thing, I think. So I definitely think Mass of the Ages is something that every Catholic ought to view with a lot of discernment, and ask yourself these important questions, man. Ask yourself these important questions. How is it possible that that what we call the traditional Latin Mass went from being the missal that no one else can make you say another missal other than what we have promulgated in this missal now forever and in perpetuity, and no one of any rank whatsoever may alter or abridge this missal? How did we go from that to it's not even an expression of the lex orandi of the Roman Rite at all? Wow, that happened quick. Ask yourself these questions. Does this make sense? Our religion, our Lord is he is truth incarnate. Let me be very careful when I say this. Our Lord is not a truthful person. He does not tell the truth. Our Lord is the truth. He is truth incarnate. Therefore, there is no higher good than the truth. So people who tell you, yeah, I lied, but I lied for the greater good. Those people are psychopaths. You need to run away from them, because there is no greater good than the truth. Because if that were true, there would be a greater good than Christ, and that doesn't make any sense. We need to ask ourselves these questions and get to the truth. Find out the truth about your faith, about your religion. This patrimony belongs to you. I don't care what these modernists say. And I also want to say another thing to everybody out there who may have reacted to the film like I did. Don't let anybody steal your joy. Don't let these modernists steal your joy. These are joyless people. You ever met a modernist? They've all got that look on their face, and they're angry, bitter, miserable people, and they're not going to be happy until everybody on earth is as angry and bitter and miserable as they are. And that's why they had to take away the Latin Mass, because it brings you joy, and they cannot stand that. Don't let anybody steal your joy. I almost let it happen to me. And then my friends were there to remind me that, that ain't the way to go, man. Don't ever let anybody steal your joy. And if they start to crack open a cold Tridentine Brewing, Trevor, what's going on with the brewery, bro? Are we going commercial?
Yeah, well, we're well on the way there, Mark. So yeah, just a quick update on things.
Please.
Yeah, we've got. So we're going to start out with 3 beers. Our Cristeros Mexican Lager, our Dies Irae Imperial Stout, and Quartermaster Jerry Blonde Ale. And the last one is a patriotic beer that's honoring my grandfather, who's in the U.S. Navy.
Outstanding.
So those are the 3. We've already been working with been working with Chris Lewis from Veritas Catholic on the label designs for the cans. They're going to be in cans. It's phenomenal. I don't know what else to say about it. I'm so excited. If you've seen some of our labels before, you might think, wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, this is like nothing I've ever seen from labels that we've done before, like 10 times better than anything that we've got. So I'm really excited for people to see it. So we're just working out different behind the scenes, different contractual things. So because we can't brew it all in our basement, we're going to be having the beer brewed with a brewery. It's actually Catholics actually also run the brewery, this other brewery, but we're going to be brewing it with them, or it's going to be brewed at their facility. We're still going to be involved. It's not like we're distant, but it's with our recipes, and it's going to start around Chicagoland. And then we're looking to grow it from there. So there's just like contractual things that are in the background going on right now. We got certain licenses that we needed for the federal and state level. So a lot of fun times talking with lawyers, Mark. That's what's been going on.
Yeah, I tell people anytime you want to do something that ought to be easy and free, but it's not, you can thank me, because that's our whole job, making people fill out forms in triplicate.
Yeah, there's been a lot of fun times, a lot of legal bills. So
just logo licensing alone. I mean, I watched that movie about the guy who founded McDonald's, the founder or whatever, and all I could think of is, an entire forest in the Northwest gave its life to make this film, and all the paperwork that went back and forth. Because every time you see a logo, McDonald's owns that. They got to be compensated, and the logo's got to be shown the right way with the right colors and the right dimensions. And just licensing logo stuff alone, that'll eat your lunch, man.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. And imagine dealing with any level of government, but especially when it gets to alcohol. It's so complicated, from going back certainly to Prohibition. A lot of those laws were still on the books. So Caitlin Smith asked in a question, can you order online? So no, and not right away, at least. Here's the reason why. Only 12 of 50 states allow for direct-to-consumer shipments of beer to consumers. It's like, if we want to ship you beer, only 12 of the states allow for it. Now, when it comes to wine, 49 of the 50 states allow for wine shipments. The wine lobby was on top of it about 20 years ago, got all the state laws changed. The beer lobby was way behind. Brewers associations, they're starting to try and put pressure on lawmakers, but I do think that there's probably some resistance from distributors in the background, that they don't quite like it. Now, you will see, and it is true, you will see there are breweries and distributors that do ship nationwide. It's one of those things where it's not really enforced, the law, but if someone wanted to crack down on it, so if there was a DA or an attorney general, state attorney general, that wanted to crack down, they could. And so we don't want to go that route right now.
Sure.
Well, ever breaking the law. But certainly that's an avenue that we'd love to pursue, but it's very, very difficult, at least to start. So unfortunately, we're in the traditional realm to get going, which is a good thing, because if we can make it work traditionally, consumers don't have to pay for the shipping costs. And believe me, if we shipped it to people, it starts to get expensive. I mean, I think that people don't want to pay for, let's just say, a 6-pack. They don't want to pay $10 or $15 in shipping just to get the 6-pack. So that's where you start to run into these costs that become prohibitive for people in budgets. I mean, people just don't have all this money to spend on beer, and then it becomes a novelty thing. So if we can get on store shelves and get things going that way, which is what we're doing, that's a more sustainable route anyway. And then we'll have to see long term if we can get going. Blaze asked about the merch too.
You can definitely order merch.
Definitely get the merch. So yeah, we have our merch store. You can go to TridentineBrewing.com. You can get the merch there, help support us that way, get some cool merch while you're doing it. So we'd certainly appreciate that.
But I know, Caitlin, I don't know how it is. I don't know where you live, but typically, at least here in Texas, like if there's a wine or a beer that's kind of exotic, I can usually get it distributor to distributor. Like I'll go to my liquor store and I can have them special order it or something like that. I don't know if they'll be able to do that or not, because I think, Trevor, correct me if I'm wrong, the law is a little bit different if shipping distributor to distributor or something like that. It's a whole thing.
It is. Yeah, Mark, that's a fantastic point. So for example, let's just say that we got established and things are going fine. if we had a demand from, let's just say a specialty liquor place or whatever, yeah, we could definitely look to get it there. If it made sense and talks with a distributor in another state, if we had to ship it over to the distributor, on a truck or whatever, that's a possibility. And that's totally legal. So that part's not a problem. It's also though about, because we're going about this in a very untraditional way. Traditionally, yeah. Speaking of tradition,
and that's our show, folks. That's enough. No, I'm just kidding. We don't drink any modernist beer on this show, Trevor.
That's right. No modernist beer. You need to go to Trad Recovery for that. So yeah, the model that we're doing, usually what happens if you want to get a beer going, you usually start by opening a tap room, starting your own physical commercial brewery, opening a tap room, showing sales. Then you go to a distributor, and then you can show them your sales, and then you can get on store shelves if they think that there's potential there. Okay. We're kind of skipping that part. We're going right to certain distributors and saying, hey, we got this great product. There's a whole huge group of people out there that love it, Catholics, and we'd like to get it out there. And the part that we just need to get over the first hurdle for is, okay, show us your sales. Well, we don't have sales because
right.
Well, at least initially, we don't want to build a brewery just because my father is doing this. It's a hobby for him. He loves doing the hobby. He doesn't know if he wants to get back into brewing full time and running a commercial brewery, at least just yet to start. And so we want to take the route of, we'll work with another brewery. We'll get it brewed. Let's get out on store shelves. Let's see how it does. And then let's go from there. That's sometimes a hard sell to certain distributors.
Sure.
But yeah, we've got some really good inroads with certain distributors right now around Chicago. Yeah, there's a really good chance we'll be on store shelves, I think, this summer. So
that's exciting.
Yeah, we're really hopeful. I mean, we appreciate the prayers as well. So anyone out there, pray, if Lord willing, success. Maybe God says it doesn't need to be a success, and it ends there. And that part is what it is. But your prayers for all the listeners out there, the most important thing for us, more than going to a merch shop and buying merch or following us. Just your prayers, I think, make all the difference here.
If one person at some point sees a can of Tridentine beer and tries to wonder what is Tridentine, and then they go home and they look it up, and then they get curious, and then they go to a traditional Latin mass, and then they convert. I don't care if you sell a can of beer, the entire thing, that will have been worth it. Will have been worth it.
That's a huge part of it, Mark.
Guys, there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good in the church. It's hard to see it because it's kind of under the surface. I kind of think of it like a dam that's about to break. I really do think so. I think God's people have had enough. I get the sense that there's a lot of cardinals who I wouldn't necessarily call traditionalists or friends of the TLM movement necessarily, but I think there's growing concern amongst, let's put it this way. You and I are not the only two people in the Catholic Church who see what's going on. So sometimes it can feel that way, and you can feel a little frustrated. The only people who see what's going on are people who can't do anything about it. Just relax. They're not as vocal of a group as we are, right? And the Cardinals don't start podcasts and rant and rave like we do. Right? So they're like I said, they're the Catholic Church. They think in terms of centuries, but make no mistake, they're thinking and they're acting, right?
Oh yeah.
Things are going on, and boy, I'd pay to be a fly on the wall the next conclave. I'd pay money.
That would be fascinating.
Solid money. I wonder if they'll let that. Maybe I think they'll let Tex Cathar to do a live show from the Sistine. I think if we ask nicely, I think we can just live stream the whole conclave, and it'll be like a WWF tournament, right? Because I'm telling you, somebody's coming to blows. There's the Swiss Guard is going to get called in to break up something. Because
better be there, Mark.
Can we get a close up of Mark's Mary statue? It looks pretty. So this statue that you see, I got at a store we have here in Texas called Fiesta. Fiesta is a supermarket, and it's fantastic because you can get a fully trimmed, ready to go brisket, a house key in the shape of an AK-47 rifle, and Catholic religious goods all in the same place. It's amazing. It's an amazing store. So that's where I got it. It cost me like $30 or something like that. I had it blessed, and now it sits there on my desk. And yeah, so lucky to live here in Houston, and where we have a lot of at least outward Catholic religiosity, maybe if not so much inward. And I could work on that myself for sure.
What a store, Mark.
It's great.
I mean, seriously.
Fiesta is amazing. Fiesta, you don't just go to get, if you say, I'm going to Fiesta to get tortillas, I'm going to ask you what kind, because they have a whole aisle full of corn, blue corn, corn and flour, call it mitada. Yeah, tortilla mitada. It's half corn and flour mixture. They have flour tortillas. They got burrito tortillas, and they're all fresh. They were all made right there in store. It's incredible. It's amazing.
I'm going to have to check it out sometime. Seriously. It reminds me of, I don't know if you ever watched the series Parks and Rec, but one of the characters, Ron Swanson,
food and stuff.
Food and stuff. Yes, I was going to say food and stuff.
Where I buy my food and most of my stuff.
It's my religious store. I go get my statues of Mary. I got my everything else. I got my food. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fiesta's got it all. In fact, there was a time when that's where, if you were an illegal immigrant, that's where you get your ID. You go to Fiesta, and they got a place there that'll do it up for you. Trevor, I can get you a degree from Harvard tonight, son. Tonight. You got $50. Congratulations. You're an Ivy Leaguer, buddy.
It would be worth as much as what the actual Ivy Leaguers get. I
think. Well said. Yeah. If the shoe fits. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Go see Mass of the Ages. I'll put a link in the description, or you can just type it into the YouTube search bar. It will come up, all 3 episodes. They're available, and it's just really it's an arresting exhibit. I really enjoyed it. And I want to thank the Mass of the Ages team for making it. And if there's anything, Dan, if you're still in the chat, if there's anything that we can do to help you guys out, you need but holler, and I'll have you on the show. We'll promote whatever you want. Love to have you guys back on. Trevor, thank you so much for coming on, and we're going to let y'all go. Trevor, any last words, parting thoughts?
I will say, speaking of supporting Mass of the Ages, if you go to their site, the Mass of the Ages Society, it's not done with the trilogy. They are working towards putting together priest training films, and even TLM sets to go, basically, for priests, so that they can practice and learn the TLM at home. So even if their bishop's not supportive of them learning, that they can, in their spare time, learn it and learn how to say it in private masses. So that's a project that's ongoing. So, definitely go to latinmass.com, and you can learn more about the Mass of the Ages Societies and contribute to that. So they're still filming that. So there's more exciting things to come from the Mass of the Ages crew. It's not over with just episode 3.
That's outstanding. Cameron O'Hearn, you were doing the Lord's work out there, buddy. Keep it up. And yeah, don't ever let the devil get you down. He doesn't deserve to steal your joy. I always say life is hard, but it's harder when you don't pray the rosary. Guys, we're coming into the home stretch of Lent. It's Holy Week next week. So let's keep each other in our thoughts and prayers. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And remember, life is hard, but it's harder when you don't pray the rosary. Everybody have a good night.